It's June, the month of egalitarian love, and as such, we'll be looking at the two visual novels that promote the most important aspects of that very notion. Through the portrayal of girls kissing, unique obsessionality, and eating human flesh, I hope that you too might understand the meaning of a slightly twisted true love. Both the visual novels we are looking at today are shorter English original visual novels originally developed for game jams and are completely free to read on Steam. So without further ado, the first visual novel we are looking at is titled It Gets So Lonely Here. You as the protagonist are a lone girl running through a forest with no idea where you are going nor any idea where you are. You cannot let yourself be caught and your only desire is to escape. While that might seem like an impossibility, luckily you come upon a crossroads with 3 different paths that may lead to your freedom. A path that leads to a coast, a path that leads to a town, and a path that leads to a castle. And choosing one of these paths may completely change your fate. Alright, so this is a visual novel that Ebi Hime made for 2023's Yandere Game Jam. If you don't know who Ebi Hime is, she has written and programmed a lot of visual novels and is one of the most well-known indie visual novel developers. It Gets So Lonely Here is one of her more recent titles, and it's thematically quite enchanting. The intro to It Gets So Lonely Here is very short, so the bulk of the story lies in the 3 different routes you can choose to take at the crossroad. Each path encompasses its own short story with a unique character, but they all tie in to build up a desolate and lonely world. In a way, each route is its own fairy tale, loosely connected to tell the story of the protagonist's fruitless struggle against fate. I love how each heroine seems normal at first, of course being lonely since the world is now desolate from what they once knew, but each has their own unconventional, twisted definition of love that leads them into yandere tendencies. And yes, one of those girls does consider eating someone a form of love so she can feel them inside of her. Ah yes, my favorite Umineko quote, "Without cannibalism, it cannot be love." Or maybe without love, it cannot be cannibalism. The length of the routes are about 40 minutes each, and each one must be read to unlock the conclusive ending to the story. Or so you'd think to believe, but there's a true end as well, and I would have gone about my days without ever knowing that if it wasn't blatantly mentioned in the notes section of the extra menu. One thing I really like about this visual novel is that it's told in second person, a narrative voice not often used in literature in general, let alone visual novels. Second person writing involves the narrator talking directly to the reader. Whilst very odd at first, you quickly get accustomed to it, and it ends up concluding the narrative nicely in the endings of It Gets So Lonely Here. Whilst there were not a lot of art assets made for this game, due to the timely nature of game jams, that did not stop it from having its own artistic charm. It employs an older visual novel UI style, along with a lower resolution, to embody a sort of rustic feeling in presentation. Each route has about 2 CGs and a couple of character sprites, which is enough for It Gets So Lonely Here's short story length. The soundtrack uses a reoccurring motif, a melody that is present throughout different pieces in the soundtrack. This technique can be hit or miss, especially since the soundtrack is only several tracks in length, but in my opinion it was executed really well, and I especially like the Mermaid soundtrack. It Gets So Lonely Here is a very interesting read. Yanderes are, in general, not the most versatile type of character. Extreme obsessiveness can only be written in so many ways, but It Gets So Lonely Here manages to make each character be unique, with just enough touch of yandere to spice things up, and for that reason I can heavily recommend you read this visual novel. But if you thought there was only one Yuri yandere cannibalism visual novel, you'd be sorely mistaken. Without a Voice is a dark fantasy visual novel following the paths of 2 women, the first of which is named Cassidy. The protagonist, exiled princess, and eldest child of her kingdom's royal family, who is very kind but extremely clueless. The second woman is a mysterious beauty named Elowen, who is graceful at times and quick to anger in others, and sometimes behaves in an otherworldly way. These two meet under their extraordinary circumstances and hit it off immediately. As the story progresses, Cassidy's relationship with Elowin slowly changes, as do her feelings toward her brother, with whom she communicates through letters. The story is very character focused, and the setting is rather confined, so whilst there is minor world building involving Cassidy's past, don't expect some action-packed, life-changing plot. This is very much a come for the Yuri and stay for the Yuri visual novel. Without a Voice surprised me because its entire cast is voice acted, and it's done extremely well. Kind of ironic given the name of the visual novel, when you think about it. The visual novel takes place over 7 days, in which many choices are made, which leads to one of 8 endings. 4 good endings and 4 bad endings. And yes, one of those bad endings involves cannibalism. Though in a roundabout way you could argue it's decomposition and not cannibalism, and I get that makes absolutely no sense outside of the context. But either way, if you want to see one living being consume another, this visual novel has exactly that. I appreciate that each of the endings are different enough to feel worth pursuing. I find oftentimes that some routes or endings can be redundant in shorter visual novels just to pad read times, but luckily both the visual novels we have looked at today did not have this problem. I wasn't a huge fan of the choice system in Without a Voice, however, because the choices for the most part don't change, and thus you find yourself trying a bunch of different choice paths that shouldn't seem like they lead to a different outcome, but in fact do. AKA, you'll probably need a guide for this one. Whilst there isn't a true end, some good ends are happier than others, and every end works in tandem to slowly unravel the full picture of Cassidy and Elowin's circumstances. There are minor depictions of characters showing homophobia and implied incestual thoughts, and whilst some ends can get pretty dark, overall I found Without a Voice to be more of a pleasant read, but then again I read a lot of fucked up shit, so my visual novel overtone window is extremely shifted. And if none of that happened to convince you to give this visual novel a try, I should also mention it's published by Studio Elan, developer of some of the best Yuri titles out there. But if you want my opinion, I think Without a Voice is a great short read if you want a quick Yuri fix. The fact of the matter is that I haven't read a lot of Yuri visual novels, but of the ones I have read, most turned out to be enjoyable reads. I didn't go out of my way to find Yuri visual novels with yanderes and cannibalism in them. I just kinda happened upon them while I was on vacation. But if reading stories of girls obsessing over other girls and eating each other whilst living it up on the coast is wrong, I don't want to be right. Though, you know, on second thought, maybe we don't have to do the cannibalism thing. It Gets So Lonely Here and Without a Voice are just 2 of hopefully many more Yuri visual novels I'll be covering this month. So let me know if you have any recommendations. Otherwise, thanks for watching. See you later. Bye. Make sure to appreciate your loved one and practice safe cannibalism. That exists.